This
Yes, we are live.
Yes, thank you, actually, Karl, for being my guest today and actually talking about the executive and team coaching. I'm very glad to have you again in this series, of and talking about today. We're talking about the how to make use of external coaching, right? So
Yes.
welcome, Karl. Welcome, and
thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Mohammed. Let me first of all start with thanking you. I've enjoyed how in the last 2 years our friendship and collaboration have been growing. It's always a pleasure to converse with you, whether it is recorded or not recorded, or live or not live. Thank you for the beautiful co-creation between the two of us in the last 2 years. We perhaps should also thank COVID for that, because if it wasn't for COVID, we had not known such a wave of digitalization and globalization. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Karl. And I really appreciate your all the wisdom that you're sharing, your teaching, your generosity, and your vulnerability also. How this co-creation only comes in from the fact that actually you open up your heart fully, and this is something that's rare these days, and to find in, it's really human. Thank you for this.
I've had an evolution in my personal coaching journey. I used to be someone was mainly working with the head, and I have been learning over many years to also start taking the elevator downwards and start working with my heart. And so that is that's what you're capturing.
And I'm witnessing that, and it's a major evolution. Thanks for seeing you and after your transformation. And this is I'm grateful to be on the other side. So thank you, Karl, for all of your generosity and I think. So actually, we were talking just before, if you allow me to share, before going live, about the market here in Africa and the Middle East, and how it's evolving in the usage of executive and team coaching, and how the MCCs are actually being, in Europe are actually too much now. And however, in the Middle East and Africa, the demand is getting higher. And actually here, I can tell you actually many of the Egyptian coaches I know and the Middle Easterns are actually seeking their PCC and MCC certifications and accreditations, actually to meet some organizational needs. Still until now, they're multinationals. Some of them are, governments, and it's coming in through other consultants. But I would love actually to have this as an introduction, maybe to talk about how can we make use of the external coaching. And this is something that's very important, and thank you for sharing this with our, audience.
Well, it actually starts with how the leadership of a company thinks about coaching. It starts with the way that the leadership of a company has experience with coaching. In what way are the leadership of a company themselves actively practicing coaching or not? So it starts with awareness, knowledge, and active experience in, let's say, coaching and being coached. If the management team of a company, the CEO and the directors, have a regular habit of practicing themselves coaching amongst each other or with external coaches, it means that there is a certain basis of awareness, insight in what coaching can offer. In all the companies that I'm an executive coach for, with regular business, let's say, that is a pattern that returns. Is there enough awareness at the top of the company about coaching and what coaching can do or cannot do? And do they practice themselves coaching? That's the start. That's the start. Well, the way I see it, the way I live it, that's the start of it all. And if the answer is yes, at the top, they know what it's about, they do it, they practice it, there is awareness, Then there's another question that is being asked. Okay, should we start working with external coaches, or should we build an internal team of internal coaches? That is a question that is not a black-white question often, but it's a question that is being explored a lot these days. And often one looks then at the HR department to develop a pool of internal coaches. Sometimes it is a thing that HR business partners do. Sometimes it is the learning and development offices. It can be in various functions. Sometimes the HR director himself or herself uses part of his or her time to coach colleagues. But at a certain moment, and that's why I say there's no black-white, at a certain moment, there's an awareness that the context in which coaching needs to take place becomes too delicate to simply ask an internal coach to do it. It may become too delicate to have your colleague involved in a coaching process. And when we challenge that with the ICF coaching competences, when it comes to the ethical perspective of it, when it comes to let's say coaching presence that is being able to be present with your coachee without any background knowledge, with any background biases, without any background noise. Those two perspectives sometimes drive people towards external coaching, because it may be sensed, it may be explored as too delicate, not effective enough to use an internal coach in specific contexts. And then I'm thinking about clients that usually are at the very top of the organization, that dispose of a lot of very confidential, very delicate information that would be dangerous if it would be shared with other colleagues. Also, if it is shared with an internal coach that commits to total discretion. Yes, you can be a coach. Yes, you can be a very professional ICF certified coach, but you remain a human being.
Yeah.
And that can contain certain risks that you may both agree on in the coaching agreement that they will not have any impact. But the moment that you start to be a human being again, by way of speaking, you are not master 100% of who you are, of your behavior. There might be a slip of the tongue, and that is totally irresponsible when we're talking about coaching executives. So it is in that what I would call a zone of delicateness. I think that's the right words, where often the idea is made, yes, we should go to an external coach for this.
Well, I like how you articulated the full thing. Let's, there are many things that you have said. Each one of them needs, to dig in deeply. First of all, what we are calling coaching for, believing how coaching fits in the, in the organization. Actually, in the executives or the owners or the stakeholders are actually taking coaching themselves and experiencing coaching themselves. You're talking about the internal and external coaching, and having this blend of both, and understanding the delicacy when this can work and when this doesn't work. So I believe that the most delicate subject that I was called for in many failed assignments, I can tell it was doomed and failed, and I'm currently, whenever there is a new contract, I'm really looking at the politics behind the request. Then when you are coming in, just this one is not working well, come and coach him. This send him to coaching.
Yes.
Send this, this functional leader, go to coaching. We brought you this coach.
That is
work afterwards.
that is actually another another drive towards an external coach. But the one I explored rather was the zone of delicateness.
Yeah.
But this is actually the zone of desperation, which is another one. Actually, we don't know anymore what to do with him or her. We've tried, at least we think we tried pretty much everything. Nothing works. So, we'll get him an external coach. Well.
So this is actually, you know, the current culture that we have mostly in many organizations here. You know, everything else didn't work, so get him a coach. You know, so this is where they start currently. This is where the system is going. You know, however, to understand how coaching fits in the organization with the training, consulting, mentoring, team building, you know, with the other modalities, you know, with everything else, you know, how the coaching, you know, comes in the continuum of services put to the organization. I believe how this is tailored and adjusted, and actually how the leaders, the organization leaders, have to understand how this fits in a total solution.
It can be very frustrating, Mohammed, if you, an example of a few organizations that I've worked for. Let's say this is top level, CEO, management team. This is the line managers in between, and this is the employees at the floor of the organization. Imagine if the decision is taken that this line manager here needs to be coached because he has problems or she has problems with managing his team. And imagine that the boss of that line manager here has no clue about what coaching is all about. He was advised by the HR department that this person here could need a coach, and he or she simply agreed with that without really being involved. He or she may have been part of the intake conversation, and yes, okay, that was very well. But further, he or she has no clue about what's happening here. But then at certain moments, this person, the one that is being coached, needs to talk about this. He or she needs to share a little bit what's happening with his own boss or her own boss. And he or she here finds what we could call blind wall, a wall of, I don't have a clue what coaching is all about. That is extremely, extremely frustrating for everyone, for the leader, for the line manager being coached, and for the eventual collaborator. So this is a very unhealthy, I would even say almost toxic environment where, well, coaching cannot really have a healthy start. Sometimes it happens. And if you're lucky as a coach, you can find your way up and sometimes have reporting meetings, evaluation meetings, and also involve the leader here in the process. That can happen. And you can work a little bit yourself to enlarge the scope of the coaching culture in that organization, but much easier if it goes like this. It starts with awareness here and involvement here, and from that moment you go down. That is much more healthy.
Yes, and actually this is where most of the coaching assignments actually really makes sense, when you start it from up down. And actually you have the stakeholder and the buy-in, the full buy-in, even if they are not coached by yourself or by your organization. They're having other coaches, but they understand what coaching is, and they have this awareness of when to fit it in the organization development needs, and when to contract it, how to contract it, and understand. And this takes us to the delicacy, you know, information. I always have said that whenever I'm in a system, I'm sometimes part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. And being in a system that needs learning and development and needs reflections by a coach, being a part of the system, you know, this doesn't help bringing new awareness, provoking new things, because sometimes I'm creating my own polarities, you know, my own, you know, tendencies, my own struggles, my own conflicts. They come in across, you know, even whatever safety I'm putting in, you know, like for instance, coaching a colleague or coaching as a manager, being a manager and coaching my employees, or coaching, you know, my sister or my brother, you know, my son, you know, I may actually use coaching competences in this in this relationship, but I cannot be the coach. I cannot be fully a coach in this situation. So that reminds me of the internal and external coaching dilemma that you brought in, you know, on the delicacy of information. Whenever I'm part of the team or the system or the life of the individual, or being part of the process he's impacted or being coached around, I cannot be the coach. Yeah. I cannot be the coach of as a manager with my employee if he has a problem with me as a manager. His problem with the company is the problem with me as a manager. So let me coach you about it, you know. Tell you, sorry, you know, you're not the right person. I want to be coached by someone else because my problem is with you. I want to understand how to handle you, you know. So.
Yes. That touches directly to a concrete case that I once lived. Yeah. Well, it's quite a while ago, when I was still an internal coach. Imagine there is someone from the board who needs a coach. And the first exploration that the company does is, do we have someone internally who could do that job? Mm-hmm. And there are some intakes taking place. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, someone is chosen and another one is not chosen to be the coach. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine, Mohammed, what it does with the one that is not chosen? You are internal colleagues of each other. Yeah. So a director does not, who is your colleague, does not choose to work with you. Objectively, one can explain that. Objectively, one can describe that, well, the chemistry was just a bit better with the other one than with you. Or the other one was, he was more aligned with the style of the internal client. Yes, there can be reasons. But from a human perspective, the internal coach that is not chosen may not feel 200% happy about that, because he's an employee in the company that the other one is director in. It may demotivate, it may raise questions, it may trigger all kind of worries, all kind of questions, even stress. Imagine that a few times you are not chosen as internal coach. Ooh, that does not feel so great. That does not feel so happy. Yes. So other systems are, well, coaches are not being appointed through an intake. No, they are just being appointed like that. You will coach him or her. Take it as it is. What if the co-creative relation is not optimal? What if the co-creative relationship is not trustful enough? What if the coaching relationship does not lead to sustainable outcomes? Ouchie. Okay, objectively, this can all be explained, but as a human being, you do not necessarily get happy about that. And so that's, again, why you should be very, very delicate in connecting internal coaches versus towards internal clients. It's a very delicate process.
It's very delicate, and I believe it's very successful in huge organizations with multiple branches, different locations of the world, different verticals. When you can actually really get someone who's an internal coach, however, he is really from a very far reach organization, that you won't work with maybe for something like 5 or 10 years when you cross again like professionals, and something, when your organizations may come, nearer or something like this. I believe this comes in organizations that are maybe 6,000 employees or more. This is where you can find less probability of interacting internal coaches with their with the fellow employees or their colleagues. Else, I believe that when we teach coaching to managers, and we teach organizations what coaching is to support, with the coaching, the management coaching or the talent development coaching, internal coaching, this is the kind of internal coaching we are expecting that can support the organization to grow, but it is not real value, like, it will not come in with as the external coaching support that can be done, like for organizations that are less than 5,000 employees or something. This is what I see and encounter. I'm not sure if it is your map or not, if you can relate to this by the same, statistics or numbers or not, but this.
Well, what is key, and that is an advice that I always give to clients who wish to install a coaching culture, is another word that I'm going to bring in the conversation, that is the need of anonymity.
Yes. That's amazing.
In large organizations, it is very well possible that someone from leadership does not know at all an internal colleague from, for example, human resources, who happens to be internal coach. They don't know each other. They've never met each other because the company is too big. I know that, for instance, I know a company in the Big Four consulting industry who actually has developed an internal coaching pool with that principle, anonymity. So both, in that case, leading partners of that Big Four does not know the person that is going to be his or her internal coach. They have never met each other. They don't know each other. They are physically very far away. So that may facilitate things. But if there is a relation, a knowing each other up front, and maybe even some noise in the relation, I cannot recommend enough to actually install a coaching relation, because that has all possible arguments already up front to fail. So indeed, huge organizations where there is enough anonymity, that can work, but always remaining very, very careful.
Yeah, I like how you coined it, enough anonymity. This is really, you can take this as a real coined, requirement. It's really amazing. So how can we brief for the, for leaders who want to use external coaching after this amazing conversation? I believe that there are much more to go through, but what can you list, like, this is when to use it, this is and how to use it, and this is when not to use it, and this is how to avoid using it and select other detours. What can be like,
there are no extensive checklists for that. The first question should actually be to the coaching client, him or herself. What do you prefer? An external or an internal coach, and why? That's actually the first very simple question. And that could be a conversation between the future coaching client and her boss, or with someone from human resources, or with anyone else that is in place to have that conversation. What would be your preference, dear future coachee, an external or an internal coach, and why? And the purpose of that why is not to judge whether that why is legitimate, but is to explore if the future coachee has been reflecting on that. Well, there's a difference in cost and investment between an external or an internal coach, and that's quite clear. There can be some convictions or biases or prejudice that this future client has about internal versus external coaches. There can be many other very personal and very subjective elements that drives him or her to an external or an internal coach. And what I would advise my clients is have a conversation about a why of an external coach, not to judge about that why, because that's a very personal why, but about to have the guarantee that at least the future client has been exploring, has been thinking, has been reflecting about objective and subjective reasons why to go for an external and an internal coach. That at least it is a decision that it's not being taken somewhere in the air of a delicate gray zone. No, there have been arguments, objective ones and subjective ones, but there has been a process of reflection before coming to a choice. That's the first one. And the second one, if you go for an internal coach, please have intakes, at least three intakes with internal coaches that you do not know, that you've never seen before. And then make a selection as if it would be an external coach. That is my best guess. 3 steps. Don't make it more complicated than that. And then I think you may come in a situation that is comparable, both from ethical point of view and from presence point of view, to working with an external coach.
Yeah.
It remains a more delicate. You never know what can happen during the journey. And I think that both parties should agree that if something would come in between the totally co-creative space, the process should be able to be stopped immediately. That is something you can agree. As a 4th criterion, I would say. But if nothing happens, then I think you are in a situation that can offer enough guarantees.
Okay, so that's amazing. You know, these 3 steps, and I believe that some organizations still mix, or know, decision makers mix between the modalities. Not only the internal and external coaching, they actually mix between the accountability, of the coach with the organization when it comes to an underdeveloped leader, or underdeveloped manager, where they want him or her or they, to come in a coaching process, or invite them for a coaching process, and you find that they barely took any manager or leadership developments, before being subjected to coaching. So you find yourself tutoring, teaching, mentoring, or the assignment will be actually doomed. So what do you do in such cases, when you are assigned somebody, or somebody wants to seek external coaching, while the leader or the manager or the executive that's subject to this process did not yet take the prerequisites, for the external coaching process? How can we make sure
that is a matter of contracting? Yeah? I would recommend that whether it is an external or an internal coach, that all coaches would be credentialed by a well-reputed coaching organization, whether it is ICF or EMCC or some others. Well, of course, being an ICF man myself, I would recommend ICF. But please make sure that whoever will be the coach has deep, thorough knowledge, experience, and practice in contracting, in ethics, and in everything it takes to distinguish coaching from other modalities. Yes. That's the first key. And then I think it does not make a lot of difference whether it's external or internal, from the moment that the client seems to go to other desires. Could you give me some advice? Could you tell me what to do? Could you please give me some slide decks with some concrete tools or systems or strategies, what I have to do? Could you give me some private training? Those kind of questions. That's about contracting. And whether you are coaching internally or externally, that does not make any difference. Also, an internal coach should, after an intake, pay very careful attention to appropriate contracting. And if during the contracting phase it becomes clear that the client, that is the internal colleague, well, is not really ready or capable or open to the typical coaching process, well, then don't coach. It's as simple as that. Huh? You can try to help in other ways, but then you're not coaching, and that's okay. But then don't call it coaching.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. But actually, I believe that until now, because the culture of requesting external coaches is still mixed. Well, I will coach you. That means I will teach you. I will mentor you. I will. You recall this. It's very famous here in the region. Something like the situational leadership of Ken Blanchard, and Ken Blanchard coined the coaching, as what we believe in as mentoring. The situational leadership too. This. And the coaching term here is coined. This is mentoring. This is not coaching. And when you try to explain this to them, yes, told you this is what we contracted you for. But yeah, well, I'm in my contract. I didn't say this, and I explained to you coaching as supporting. Something like supporting / delegating. In the other spectrum. And you start having this debate. While you had it in the beginning.
Yes.
So pop culture, and sometimes it's somehow anti the popular culture that's in organizations sometimes work against you.
Well, I believe that if you compare coaching to mentoring to training to consulting to many other modalities, coaching, the way I believe it and see it, is the most sustainable of all of them. But it's also the one that is the most committing. Coaching is absolutely not a free coffee clutch. It's not a free coffee break coaching. Coaching means that you are ready and you commit for a very, very deeply committing, and sometimes, tree shaking conversation. And as a coach, I never actively go look for emotions with my client, but when they are there, and they are perfectly welcome to be there. And that's another matter when you are coaching an internal colleague, an internal leader. It's easily said up front, yes, I'm totally ready for emotions. Yes, I'm totally ready to jump in the ocean together with you. Yes, until it happens.
Yeah, this is a discussion of its own. Yesterday when I had this conversation with Mish Middleman about the systemic leadership, and we talked about pain, and when it comes, you tell them that this may be a painful process. Sometimes it introduces pain, when it comes to emotions, and it's like going to the gym for the first time, and they find pain. No, I don't want it anymore. Just take me out of this process.
Yeah. That's I can relate to that. Well, what also can happen if you do not stick to the purest interpretation of coaching. Let me tell you something, Karl, now that we are together here. Okay. Yes, you probably are aware with problems with that other colleague. I've heard something about that. Yes. He will be fired next month. Okay. And there you are as an internal coach. All of a sudden, you know something that you have absolutely no message in knowing, that will bias your presence, that may also bias your future collaboration with that colleague that is going to be fired. At that moment, you have to stop the coaching journey. There's absolutely no way that you can continue coaching that person now that you know that. And then you can say, and how is this intervention helping our co-creative relationship? Well, of course, it isn't. But these are the risks of building a trustful relationship with an internal client. You may know things that you have absolutely no message in knowing. I think
that's yeah. So thank you, Karl. Actually, that's really amazing. Can you just tell us about, for 2 minutes, tell us about your services that you can offer to your clients,
Ah,
and maybe wrap this amazing conversation. We've been above 30 minutes by 4, you know. So can you wrap up, you know, what
yes.
you have said, you know?
Thank you, Mohammed. My services are focused first of all on corporate clients, where I'm active as an executive coach and an executive team coach. That is overall corporate work. For that, the company I'm working with is www.autolit.be. And in another company that I started recently are services for coaches. It's a new development in my career since 2 years, actually. And that is www.teamcoaching.global. We're actually co-facilitate with Jonathan Wrights and Katrina Kennelly do a brand new program for team coaches that is based on the new ICF team coaching competencies. And thirdly, sometimes I'm also busy with mentoring, both individually and collectively, for people wishing to step to the MCC level. That's in a nutshell what I do. And some people may also know me from the Facebook group that I've been facilitating for a few years now on coaching journeys. And I'm actively worldwide since 2 years, digitally and globally. That was not a fixed strategy, honestly. I just went with the flow of Corona, and all of a sudden the majority of my clients are much more globally than they used to be before.
Thank you, Karl. I really was intrigued by this conversation, and I believe that there is a lot actually to add to it, and a lot to dig in also. I believe our next episode will be talking about the team coaching competences for line managers.
Yes.
And this is planned around the next month, right?
Yes.
So we will announce the date by then, I believe. Yeah. And thank you for that. And thanks for the audience who are actually following us today. Thanks for everyone, and have a great day ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Looking forward to next time.
Thank you. Okay.